Hello, and welcome back to the Coachman. Hope you enjoyed the last lovely reading, which was the Kabuliwala, and traveled all the way to India. But now we're gonna switch it up a little bit, and we're gonna be taking a not a step, I guess, away from the United States, but we're gonna take a step back into 1905. And this is gonna actually be called the Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. And this was originally set back in 1905, and this was the time when everything was tight. Money was tight, apartments were tight, and even the expectations of like other people were tight. And when I say tight, I mean it was the U.S. was going through a struggle. You know what I mean? And like we really held on to like status. You know what I mean? Like fat kid holding on to cake. So it was one of those things. But yeah, with this story of Gift of the Maggie, and it's a story about sacrifice, about love, and it pretty much is like about the kind of decisions that I think many people want to see today, but are afraid to take. So let's get into this one, and I hope you enjoy. $1.87. That was all. And 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved one and two at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheek burned with the silent imputation of parsimony that such clothes dealing implied. 3 times Della counted it. $1.87. And the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did it, which instigates the more reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles, and smiles, with sniffles predominating. While the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second, take a look at the home. A furnished flat at $8 per week. That seems like a little, but remember we're talking about basically like 1905, and basically just to give you a reference, that dollar 87 today is about like $65. So I mean, you times that by 8, we're talking about like well over like $400 like for the flat. So yeah, like as you can see, like she's hurting, but it did not exactly beg her description, but it certainly had that word on the lookout for the mendicancy squad. That's interesting. Very interesting. So in other words, basically this flat, it wasn't like below average, but it was like average. You know what I mean? It was just there. It wasn't anything like extravagant. In the vestibule below was a letterbox into which no letter would go, and an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Also, appertaining thereunto was a card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. So basically, honestly, from what it sounds, I got to stand corrected. This was average, but it was broke average. You know what I mean? Broke ass, like for real. Where the letterbox, you couldn't fit any letters because it's probably too small, and a doorbell that just it was broke out, blown out, or whatever you want to call it. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Back then, good amount of money. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20 though, they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim, and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with the powder rag. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking a gray fence and a gray backyard. Tomorrow will be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim's present. She had been saving every penny she could for months, with this result. $20 a week doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him, something fine and rare and sterling, something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. So basically, like, this lady is like just scrimping and saving just to buy that one cool gift. You know what I mean? As you can tell, she's putting a lot into it, um, which I commend her. You know what I mean? I was like, it's hard, and about Christmas, it's that time where everybody said, that old song, it's the most wonderful time of the year, which is absolute bullshit. Like, no joke. And I'm not trying to kill on Christmas. I love it. But let's be real. There are more deaths around Christmas than ever because people they feel their tight pockets getting tight. You know what I mean? And so does their throat. So it doesn't work out too well. But hopefully, everything works out well and, she finds her gift. But yeah, man, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room, and a pier glass, just to let you know, is actually like a mirror. It's a specific type of mirror, but it's just a mirror. Perhaps you have seen a pier glass in an $8 flat. A very thin and very agile person may, by observing his reflection in a rapid sequence of longitudinal strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now, there were two possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that he had been given to it by his father and his grandfather. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in the flat across the air shaft, Della would have let her hair hang out the window some day to dry, just to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gift. Had King Solomon been the janitor, with all his treasures piled up in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed, just to see him pluck at his beard every envy. So as you can see, when they're using very things like Shiva, which is, if I'm correct, it's the Indian god, it's pretty much the Indian god, and then King Solomon, which is obviously King Solomon, like the wealthy ruler. That just shows you how much that these two things really meant to them. So it's something that they hold very dear and close to their hearts. Which and honestly, I've always shaved my head, so I don't know about the hair, but I definitely know about a pocket watch. You know what I mean? There are some guys that, no joke, they have those hand-me-downs and they'll fight you for it. So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. And then she did it up again nervously and quickly. Once she faltered for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. On went her old brown jacket, on went her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts and with a brilliant sparkle still in her eyes, she fluttered out the door and down the stairs to the street. Where she stopped, the sign read, Madame Sofroni, hair goods of all kinds. One night up Della ran and collected herself, panting. Madame, large, too white, chilly, hardly looked the Sofroni. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Madame. Take your hat off, and let's have a sight at the looks of it. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame, lifting the mass with a practiced hand. Give it to me quick, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. Forget the hash metaphor. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it, any other stores, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum fob chain, simple and chaste in design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone, and not by meticulous ornamentation. Wow, I definitely need to learn how to read a little bit more. I'll get used to it though. I'll get better, but yeah, some of these words, these old school words, are wicked. As all good things should do. It was even worthy of the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him. Quietness and value. The description applied to both. $21 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with it, the 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it on the sly on account of the old leather strap that he used in place of the chain. So, like back then, I don't know. Some people, of course, many people know about it, but some don't. A pocket watch was a sign of wealth. It was almost, you know what? I would say this: if I had to equate it to like a kid today, you know how like some people like when that whole earpods was running around and people would have earpods in, it was kind of like for like kids, and it was like their status thing. That's the same thing, or it would almost be like in the 80s when men would walk around with a Bluetooth earpiece. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. I mean, of course, people can say like a Rolex, a Chanel bag, things like that. But no, this was like one of those very subtle pieces that, like, if you had the right one, you were the man. Yeah, like that's what brought everything to the yard. If you get what I'm saying, but vice versa, you don't want to not the same. But yeah, but basically that's what like really showed that like you were the man. It's like a good pocket watch. It was you were it. You were him. So so when Della reached home, her intoxication gave way a little to prudence and reason. She got out her curling irons and lighted the gas and went to work repairing the ravages made by generosity added to love, which is always a tremendous task, dear friends, a mammoth task. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny, close-lying curls that made her look wonderfully like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully, and critically. If Jim doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? So as you can see, there's another thing about it is that back in those times, and I've read it in a couple of stories, like older stories, like even though that we still hold women's beauty in like high regard today, it was extra. It was weird because it was almost like the man had his status and the woman kind of like reiterated it. You know what I mean? As opposed to today where like a lady's looks, it's her looks. You know what I mean? But back then, no, it was a representation of those like next to you. So if like a guy walked in and his woman looked like trash, it was not good for her and him. You know what I mean? But way, way, way more. Like people were, I think, slightly a little bit more pretentious. And it was wicked, especially like things like hair, simple things like hair. And I bet you she's probably still attractive, but yep, nah, they don't care. Like pixie cuts, nah, that wasn't happening. So at 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stair away down on the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit of saying a little silent prayer about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please God, make him think I am still pretty." Yo, just think about that. Like, it's Christmas. They're married. And like that's how like terrified she is of just like because she cut off her hair. Like that's wicked. And honestly, I would say this to any woman that like hears this: if you can get a hold of me, like on the website, on YouTube, whatever, subscribe, all that stuff. But then also leave me a comment, like just let me know, like if you've ever had a moment like that, because that is, I mean, that's wicked. That's got to be unbelievable. All you did was cut your hair to go buy him a gift, but you're still terrified. So that's wild. The door opened, and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow. He was only 22. Even worse. Look at that. 22. Mm. And to be burdened with a family. He needed a new overcoat and he was without gloves. Yo, white gloves were a big thing. It's weird, but it's a huge thing. I don't know why they wanted to wear gloves. Makes no sense to me. Jim stopped inside the door, as immovable as a setter at the scent of quail. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with that peculiar expression on his face. Honestly, you know what that sounds like? It almost sounds like his brain went on the fritz, just like Windows, like just stopping and giving you like the little blue wheel. And just like it's just like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I can't compute. That's it. Um so Della wriggled off the table and went for him. Jim, darling, she cried, don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It'll grow again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I got for you. You cut off your hair? Asked Jim, laboriously, as if he had not arrived at the patent fact, yet even after the hardest mental labor. Cut it off and sold it, said Della. Don't you like me just as well anyhow? I'm me without my hair, ain't I? Jim looked about the room curiously. You say your hair is gone, he said, with an air almost idiocy. I'm not gonna lie, this sounds like, yo, it is like one step away from like World War III. Like, no joke. Like, I like, this sounds like literally, he's about to be like, yo, might have to put mitts on her. Might have to be today. You needn't look for it, said Della. It's sold. I tell you, sold and gone, too. It's Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me, for it went for you. Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered. She went on with sudden serious sweetness, but nobody could ever count my love for you. Shall I put the chops on, Jim? I'm not gonna lie. The minute if that would have been me and she would have said it's Christmas Eve, boy, I would have lost it. Like just because being called boy, I'd have went off. But I mean, obviously I'm black and call me a boy. That's when it. All right, cool. That's when it's time to put like fucking start throwing hands. But this is a different story. So out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He unfolded his Della. For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or $1 million a year. What is the difference? A mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. So if you don't know, a Magi is it's kind of basically it's one of the wise men. So a Magi is just one of the, like somebody who brought like another name for I guess you want to say like I guess you can say it's one of the like I know it's I know there might be another name, but it's one of the prophets that brought Jesus a gift when he was born. But it's kind of just trying to say that like um it's just somebody bringing someone of value I guess status bringing something of value. So we're gonna find out what happens, but it don't look too good right now. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon the table. Don't make any mistakes, Dell, he said, about me. I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you'll unwrap that package, you may see why you had me going a while at first. White fingers and Nimble tore at the string and paper, and then an ecstatic scream of joy, and then, alas, a quick, feminine change to hysterical tears and wails, necessitating the immediate employment of all the comforting powers of the Lord of the Flat. I'm not going to lie to you, I don't know what he did, but I can tell you this. For her to go like screaming of joy to just breaking down, I'd like to know. For there lay the combs, the set of combs, side and back, that Della had worshipped long in a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoise shell with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in the beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers. But the tresses that should have adorned the coveted adornments were gone. But she hugged them to her bosom, and at length she was able to look up with dim eyes and a smile and say, "My hair grows so fast, Jim." And then Della leaped up like a little sing cat and cried, "Oh, oh." Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present. She held it out to him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull, precious metal seemed to flash with the reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. "Isn't it dandy, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You'll have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch, put his hands under the back of his head, and smiled. "Dell," said he, "let's put your Christmas presents away and keep 'em a while. They're too nice to use just as presents. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs, and now, suppose you put the chops on." The Magi, as you know, were wise men. See, I'm pretty good at this. Wonderfully wise men who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, these two were the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest, everywhere they are wisest. They are the Magi. So as you can see, honestly, like the reason I enjoyed this story, and I've read it like maybe like a year ago or whatever, but the reason I really enjoyed this story is because I think if you look at it, a lot of times we do get caught up so much. I think nowadays what we get caught up in what others think of us. You know what I mean? And we get so caught up in the pageantry of society. And I mean, even think about it. This story is over 120 years old, but yet it's still relevant today. And I think one of the biggest things that I got from this story is that, to me, if you look at the story, it wasn't about the gifts. It had nothing to do about the gifts. It was about what they did to give the gifts. And I think that a lot of people, they want to be in these types of relationships, but they're not willing to sacrifice to get there. And so that's why you do see a lot of people that I think, to me, they've really gotten away from what be like, I guess, our humanity, and they've gotten caught up in the sauce, in the bullshit, instead of just like, yo, making it about the other person. And that's what you get. And to me, this is what you get. You know what I mean? You get these wonderful moments when you're willing to just say, you know what? It's not about me, it's about them. And it's all about them. There's nothing coming in return. It's just about them. And you end up with wonderful stories and wonderful places like this. And I can honestly say that I've been fortunate enough to be on the receiving side of it. And then I've also been on the giving side of it and seeing what happens when you just are willing to put that out. So, um, yeah, and like I said, this is just, a simple story that gifts, they really don't matter, but the love behind them, it really does. And even after a century, here it is. It's still relevant today. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the story. Please make sure that you like this anywhere you are. Subscribe. Leave me a message on maybe your takes on the Magi, what you thought about it, and what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy, what you see, what you do, whatever it is, and then until then, and until next time, take care.